Welcome to the Bounty Zero X podcast. I'm your host, Angelo Adam, founder and CEO of Bounty Zero X. Bounty Zero X is a decentralized bounty hunting network powered by the BNTY token. Today is February 2nd. Today is February 18th, 2019, and my guest on the show is Raphael Van Troost. Raphael is the business development lead at BitPatron. Prior to BitPatron, he worked at Actus, an ERC-20 project that was creating trading and analytics tools. Before that, he occupied various strategy and M&A positions at Noor Advisors in Dubai and Geneva, Deutsche Bank in London, and UBS Investment Bank in Zurich. In 2013, Raphael founded Swissline Real Estate, and Raphael studied business and economics at the University of Basel, Switzerland, and economics at Yale University, and holds an executive MBA from INSEAD. So BitPatron is a direct response to patrons' proclivity to censor content on their platform. BitPatron allows podcasters and video creators to offer exclusive content to their supporters and has plans to integrate a number of other third-party platforms like Discord groups in order to support chat rooms. So Raphael, welcome to the Bounty Zero X podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much, Angelo. It's a pleasure to be here.
So why don't you tell us a quick summary of what BitPatron is?
BitPatron is an alternative to Patreon. It's Bitcoin based initially, but the main key feature is that it has a decentralized business model, meaning we're trying to decentralize the power structure that is usually centralized in typical platforms such as Patreon. The advantage of this is that we're putting the content creator back in control, meaning whenever there's somebody that is opposing a content creator, for instance, for an unpopular opinion, there's nobody really in the structure which has the power to mute somebody. Not even BitPatron would have the capability to block somebody entirely at all times. Payment streams, content, and access to followers and patrons is secured by this decentralized structure. And this is something which totally differentiates us from competitors.
So BitPatron launched their alpha version of the platform recently. When was that? And can you tell us a little bit about how the launch went?
Yeah, so we launched BitPatron in December, and the alpha was released 2 weeks ago. It's a proof of concept, and it's to show that we can actually create the platform. It works. It's still quite basic, but the feedback has been immense, and we've had numerous people signing up. It's more to show support and to test out how it would actually work and to brainstorm on how the fully fledged version would look like. And so yeah, we're quite happy. The next steps include defining sort of how the final fully fledged version would look like, and also it's an exercise to recruit influencers that can help us spread the word and grow this movement.
So what has been the initial user feedback that you've got from your early signups?
We observed two kinds of feedbacks, main groups of feedbacks. One is coming from the blockchain crypto space, and they're usually just happy that there's a Patreon alternative that is accepting Bitcoin, which wasn't. There's a couple of others providing similar services, but there's nothing really sophisticated yet. And then the other group are people that are just, they're worried or sometimes even fed up by growing a contents business, creating, putting a lot of energy, work in be it podcasts, videos, all sorts of material, and then being at the mercy of a couple of large players, not really being able to have this longevity in their business that other businesses have. I think for them, there's no issue of getting maybe you're not broadcasted on certain platforms, but being platform in the sense of completely losing your business is just something that is unacceptable for most of them, and therefore they're interested in this concept that we're trying to pursue.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good topic that we could dig into in a little bit further detail. So you mentioned that a lot of creators have been being banned from, platforms that are well known for providing the service to content creators. So Patreon is the most well known of all of those services. So Patreon has been in the news recently for banning users on their platform who violate their content policies. And there's been some controversy over what their policies are and what whether it's arbitrary and what guidelines the users of the website need to follow. And so that's resulted in some amount of backlash and people leaving their platform in search of other alternatives that are more censorship resistant. So that seems like the niche market and the angle that you're trying to exploit in the market, which makes your service a potential alternative to services like Patreon.
That's right.
So, can you give us a little bit of context on that about the Patreon in the news and the kind of this problem that is in this space for content creators?
Yeah, I mean, we're not blaming Patreon per se. I think sometimes it's their own decision, but sometimes they probably also have a lot of pressure from third parties such as credit card companies or PayPal, and ultimately they're at the mercy as well of other players, and their business model just doesn't allow them. It's sort of always they always have to balance between being popular and being for the mainstream, but then at the same time they have to sometimes follow the demands of others, and sometimes they're just being cautious, not in order not to get into any troubles. And so this is hurting content creators, not only the ones that get banned. I think it's not that many, but it's creating a lot of fear. So if you have a popular podcast, for instance, you're thinking twice if you're really building this up and investing a lot of time and money over many years, and then potentially you might be able to lose it, or you might have to scale down on what you're saying, or try to sort of make it according to guidelines you might not disagree with, and therefore you might not be as interesting for your audience and ultimately have a less good podcast. So I think that is basically the key thing that we're trying to address and say, and we don't want to create a platform which is for extremists, and that is allowing everything. We just want to follow the law, and we want to have the filter not on the platform level, but on the user level. So if you're not, if you don't want to see certain content, that's your choice. Nobody can stop you from that, but that should be your choice and not somebody else choosing for you. If it's against the law of a certain country, then we have to either block that content in the specific country, or if it's illegal altogether, we just have to delete it. But or deplatform somebody if it's against the law. But those are very extreme cases, and even in those cases, we just don't want them on the platform anymore. But that doesn't mean that we want to destroy their entire business. Meaning, our business model, in our case, would just remove them from BitPatron's front end, but then their payment structure, which is, by the way, in our case, from user to content creator straight away, meaning we don't have any power over the payment, over those contributions anyway. So we couldn't do anything, and they're not on BitPatron anymore. And but the payments would be unaffected. They would maybe not be able to grow their channel the same way as they did before, but we would definitely not destroy their business altogether, which is currently the case when somebody gets deplatformed.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So, as you mentioned, there are a lot of other alternatives that are similar to Patreon out there, so, and a lot of people in the content creators have been looking for alternatives, and it seems like there's no one alternative that is really the optimal solution. It seems like all of them have some sort of um, kind of feature set that doesn't make it the perfect alternative to Patreon. And so there's been, quite a lot of development from projects to try and offer a better alternative to Patreon. And so some of them, for example, Subscribestar, Kickstarter's new Patreon drip. There's quite a lot of other platforms that are working on this problem. And so you mentioned some of the features and architecture of the platform that you're emphasizing from a business model and from a platform architecture perspective in order to emphasize some of these values that you want the platform to hold, and some of the values you want the platform to uphold. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how you're designing the system in order to sustain this type of structure where the content creators who are potentially banned from the platform, how their revenue won't be completely removed, but they'll only just be removed from the front end of the platform. And some of the other design, I guess you could call them design choices that you're making when you're creating this type of platform in order to uphold these values. So, for example, a block stack ID is one of the features that you guys are using. So we haven't talked about Blockstack yet. So can you give us like a brief overview about what Blockstack ID login is and how having that type of feature for Blockstack ID supports the types of values that you're promoting for the platform?
Absolutely. So our business model is basically trying to lower the power of any player within our business model, including our power as well. So as I said before, we're limiting our power on the front end. And so the other parts that are key to the business model are the payment gateway and content storage. Payment currently is with Bitcoin, but we want to make this a mainstream solution as well, meaning we are going to choose various payments from Stripe, PayPal, credit cards. They will go directly to the content creator. We will just get a notification through an API that it's been paid in order to unlock the content, but we're not taking a cut out of this payment. It goes 100% straight. I mean, only deducting, of course, the fees of whenever there's a fee involved from be it PayPal, whatever. This part doesn't go to the content creator, but everything else goes straight to the content creator. And we don't take a cut out of this. And once it's set up, it's just a direct payment, and we cannot stop this payment. And therefore, there's already one element of power that has been removed from us, which also makes us less vulnerable. Nobody can put pressure on us to stop a payment since we're not in control of it. So that's the payment side. And then the other side, the content side, we're collaborating closely with Blockstack. The idea is there that content should be encrypted and should be, again, not in our control. So it's a further sort of step in order to protect the content creator, his content or her content, as well as the the subscribers to their content, which would be also stored there. And context can be downloaded at any time. Therefore, whenever, even if you would get blocked potentially by Blockstack, which would be highly unlikely because it's encrypted, they cannot even link the content directly to the front end. In that case, you would still have everything else. You would have your content probably saved. You can download, you can make backups of your content at any time. And so ultimately, there's nobody really entirely in control of anything. And so this puts just more power to the content creator and allows the content creator to really build up something meaningful. And ultimately also this means that content will be interesting for the audience, which is basically win-win for everybody in this architecture.
So you mentioned that you're planning on supporting multiple payment methods. So currently you guys have Lightning support for Bitcoin payments. So what is going to be the next payment method that you're planning to introduce?
So we like Bitcoin, since there's absolutely nobody that can stop a Bitcoin payment from a subscriber to a content creator. But it has certain downsides as well, such as automated subscriptions that, for instance, you have small payments being paid every month. They cannot be automated at this point. So that is something which is not ideal. And there's also users. We want to be a solution for everybody, not just for the blockchain space. And therefore, we know we need to offer other payment gateways as well. In the end, we don't really care if it's blockchain or crypto or whether it's another technology. What matters for us is that we can create something meaningful for content creators and ultimately for the content itself. And therefore, we think this balance, taking other gateways, payment gateways into account and enabling users to pay with various gateways. First of all, if it's various gateways, you get blocked by one, you still have all the others. If you get blocked by all of them, you still have Bitcoin. You can still convince your audience to switch to Bitcoin. But in terms of adoption and in terms of competing with other mainstream solutions, I think it would be too radical to just choose Bitcoin only. If you want Bitcoin only, you can do that. That you can choose which gateways you're activating. And in terms of your question, which one is the next one? We haven't defined it yet, but we're trying to, and we're playing around with the PayPal API, and we're sort of experimenting around with it. And it can be done. We've checked it, and it can be done. And so we're right now defining how the fully fledged version will look like. We're still gathering feedback, and then we'll decide. But I think Bitcoin is also a good way to get attention right now, and it's also easier for Bitcoin content creators to move over. We have already content creators from the cryptocurrency space that they are doing podcasts themselves, or they're writing reports about investment strategies, and they are currently asking their cryptocurrency audience to go on Patreon, pay there, and uniquely to sort of monitor who paid and who didn't pay. But it doesn't really make sense to them, since everybody is in the crypto space and they have to do this detour through a credit card systems. So those guys, they already want to be in the platform, and we're working one-on-one with various of them, and they will be completely leaving Patreon. One is leaving in 4 days and completely moving his audience over to BitPatron. This guy has not that many subscribers, only 250, but each one of them is paying $50 a month. So it's more about showing the use case rather than the revenue at this point. And so I think this is showing that it works and that it makes sense, and there's a business use case for it.
Have you guys looked into the Groundhog service for Ethereum payments? I don't know if you're familiar with Groundhog. They're a project in the Ethereum blockchain that is facilitating subscription payments with cryptocurrency with Ethereum. And as you pointed out with Bitcoin, that's not something supported. And it hasn't been also supported for the Ethereum space and for other blockchains that are out there. But recently, and that's especially important for these types of business cases where you're offering you have a group of subscribers who pay a small amount to subscribe to your channel every month. And it's also relevant. It has also a relevant use case for a subscription as a service software. If a company's offering, a monthly subscription fee to access their service, and they want to charge clients every month automatically, automated payments is important for that. But there's really been no easy way to do that with cryptocurrency, or at least an easy automated way to do that. But we've been talking with the Groundhog team, and they've released a initial version of their service, which offers this type of functionality. And it seems like for BitPatron, this would be a natural use case for that type of technology, and something I suggest you guys look into if you haven't already.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I don't know why it's not being pursued any further at this stage, but we'll definitely take it up with the team and see whether this can be implemented. I think it's a great idea. We've been lately talking more to traditional sort of people that have a lot of content in the traditional space, and so talking a bit less about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in the last few days, apart from the guys that we're onboarding and are completely happy with having just Bitcoin. But yeah, I agree with you. Could be definitely something. I mean, ultimately, our goal is to offer as many gateways as possible, payment gateways as possible, because this is making our business model even stronger. So yeah, thank you very much for this pointer.
Yeah, I'll include a link to the Groundhog in the show notes. We're
Great.
going to be adding support for them for our software service that we offer on our platform, so that companies who want to purchase our service can do so with crypto and just do the monthly subscription. So let's move on to the exclusive content feature. So what makes these types of platforms like Patreon and your platform appealing is that it's not just giving a donation to a project or creator that you like. Anyone can do that, and it's pretty easy to do that with just an address. But platforms like Patreon and like your platform, in addition to that, also make it easy for content creators to give exclusive content to their subscribers and their followers who donate to their channel and who contribute to their channel. So can you talk about a little bit about the content, the exclusive content component, and just the value proposition that platforms like Patreon bring from a higher stepping back from a higher level, the value proposition that these types of platforms bring to content creators that allow them to provide a service that, in addition to just accepting donations, by adding like a payment link in their videos.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a key feature of BitPatron as well. We want to be as versatile as possible, meaning we want to. It's important for us to have, on one hand, a platform that is interesting to browse through and to see high quality content ad free for users, even if they're not subscribed. But at the same time, in order to allow this, we know we need to have high quality content creators, and they need to be able to grow a thriving business on our platform. In order to do that, we're giving them various tools to monetize their content, meaning they can give things entirely free. They can choose to make a preview that you sort of have to pay for if you want to see the entire thing. Then there's options that's for some type of content interesting, and for others it doesn't make sense. For instance, if you want to download something, that you have to pay then, but you can watch it for free if you don't download it. So we're still in the process of to gather all the feedback, but we've already have sort of defined certain of them that we think are a good idea. But yeah, exclusive content is important in order to encourage high quality content producers to be on the platform in the first place.
Yeah, it strikes me that another important feature would be the integrations with third-party applications. So let's say you're a content producer who uses as your primary content channel a podcasting host or a YouTube channel. You have a YouTube channel or a Twitter channel. So offering a feature which would allow content creators to integrate the content that is produced on these third-party channels into their BitPatron profile, so that followers will be notified through BitPatron anytime new content is created by one of the content creators that they're subscribed to. So do you guys have plans to integrate with these third-party platforms, and what is some of the most sought after, most requested platforms and timeline for this?
Yes, that is the case. In our alpha, you can already embed YouTube videos, but as I said previously, the alpha is more of a proof of concept, so yeah, third party applications are more than welcome, but you can also upload them on your own in case you don't want to rely on them. But I think you will see that BitPatron is always trying to find this balance between protecting the content creator but still allowing for the ease of mainstream solutions whenever possible. So we're not sort of pursuing this radical business model where we're trying to be completely bulletproof and not allow any sort of Silicon Valley company on the platform and be this sort of how do you say sort of this project which is more trying to recreate something that is completely sort of not relying on anything that you're familiar with. This is not the case. The only objective for us is to allow content creators to create high quality content without fearing of losing their business. And if we can allow mainstream solutions to be on the platform without causing any problem, then that's more power to everybody, and that's great. So yeah, it will be possible to embed any type of content.
And so you're planning on not being just a completely uncensored platform, which is totally censorship resistant, but working within the existing ecosystem so that you can support partnerships with payment processors like PayPal and MasterCard and Stripe, and yet still have a balance where in the event that a specific content creator has their account suspended, that they can still access their content and still access revenue using third-party sources. So it's kind of like this middle ground approach where you can still sustain mainstream adoption and mainstream growth, but not having some of the downsides that some of the existing platforms like Patreon have regarding their content policies and the payment of their content creators.
That's right, but I have to add that if you want to go completely radical, you can. You can have all your payments in cryptocurrency, so nobody can control your payments once they're set up with your subscribers. Nobody can stop them on transferring you those payments. Then you can have your content on Blockstack, which is very safe. But in case there's a problem there, you can host it somewhere else as well. So there's we will have this feature that you can host it on your own server if you want. And then lastly, yes, you can get if you don't break any laws, you will be on the front end, and if you break the law, you will not be on the front end anymore. And then you can either look for another third-party provider that is allowing you there, or you can create your own website and publish it there. Obviously, you will not be marketed anymore by BitPatron. But so in other words, yes, you can go very, very, very extreme if you want in terms of being sort of completely resistant by any third parties, apart from the front end, where you would be removed if you breach existing laws.
Yeah, so one of the controversial topics relating to the BitPatron issue was that of content creators producing content on third-party websites and then being banned on BitPatron or on Patreon for the content that they produced off their website. And so it was a lot of the commentary on this in the news over the past few months has been criticizing Patreon for not being clear on what those content guidelines were, so that content creators didn't really know what they needed to be following in order to not have their content banned or their accounts banned. And then in addition to that, there were some issues relating to not knowing what the content policies were and how to follow them. Follow those policies. And then also they're just being like on a case by case basis where Patreon would be evaluating whether or not to ban any given content creator on a case by case basis, looking at the facts and circumstances of each individual case. And that doesn't really seem that scalable, and also leaves a lot of opportunity for subjectivity. So for individual subjectivity in deciding which content creators are allowed to post content, which aren't, and the subjectivity would depend on the type of content they're producing. And that is also related to a lot of the controversy in the social media space as a whole, where you're seeing content creators being censored or banned from various platforms like Twitter, for example, based on the views of the content that they create. So like political speech or other types of speech. So it seems like Patreon's, from an outsider looking at this situation, it seems like the difficulty has been in crafting content policies which can be followed and that are clear and that don't favor certain viewpoints over others. So how does BitPatron, what are your thoughts on this topic, and how does BitPatron plan to approach this topic of content guidelines and those relating to policies surrounding what content is allowed on the site, whether people would be banned for activity off the site or their viewpoint on issues expressed on other platforms?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We completely disagree with the current movement of putting putting sort of the decision making on which kind of content is tolerated and not tolerated to the platform operator. We think it makes no sense at all. And as you mentioned before, there's constantly adoption of guidelines based on political pressure, which has mostly no legal basis. It's just based on consensus, and sometimes it's consensus in certain areas of the US. And it's not a global solution, and we want to be a global solution, meaning there's only one simple factor to do that, and that is to say we allow everything on the platform which is not breaching any laws. And we are putting the filtering mechanism in the hands of the user, meaning if you're a user and you don't want to see certain content, that is your choice. And you can filter unwanted content, even if it's you don't want to see certain political bias, then okay, you can do that. You don't want to see anything religious, then that's your choice. But we think it's completely wrong that the platform operator is choosing for you, despite that there's absolutely no legal problem. So we understand that there needs to be some sort of filtering mechanism. Otherwise, you just get sort of exposed to all sorts of content that you potentially don't want. So we put this filter in your own hand, and you can choose that if that's what you want. But we think it's wrong if somebody else is choosing for you.
So let's jump to a different topic. What are some of the recent funding goals that you guys have accomplished on the business side in order to support development of the platform? Have you guys raised funds from private investors, and what are your plans regarding business funding?
Yeah, so at this stage we haven't accepted any funding yet, but we're considering to raise. We don't need anything immediately to develop the platform. We're 6 people, and we have we are financing the current development on our own. But obviously, the next phase would be to gain more traction for the platform, and this requires us to be potentially frequently at various locations, and for that, as well as legal and other sort of services that are required to grow the platform, and therefore we are considering at this stage to raise funding. We're talking to various people right now, also VCs, primarily from the US, but we haven't sort of closed anything yet. We hope there will be something potentially in the next 3 months in order to sort of kickstart that second phase where we're going to be much more visible.
And what is the long-term roadmap in terms of making the business model profitable? So Patreon, I think, recently mentioned that their current model wasn't sustainable and that they would be exploring other types of monetization models. So, for example, letting creators sell content like mugs or T-shirts to their followers. So, what have you guys planned, and what are you guys planning to do in order to monetize this type of business?
Yeah. So we have defined several things that we don't want to have, and we have defined a couple that might happen. So we haven't fully defined it yet, but what we don't want to have is we don't want to have any ads, and we are not, as I mentioned before, due to our business model, we're not taking any cuts from the payments. What currently Patreon is doing. The ideas that we have to monetize the platform are, one is that larger content creators would have to pay a contribution at a certain size to be on the platform. That is one option. So basically, in the end, it turns out to be the same. It's a cut of whatever they make. but it's not, it's not. We're not cutting them off if they decide not to be on the platform or not to pay us, then they would just not be on the front end, but they would not lose their business. Whereas if you're with Patreon, you don't really have a choice, right? There's just a cut being taken away, it's up to 15%. I think it's quite high, and you have really no choice to sort of choose an alternative, because once it's set up, it's very hard to move your audience elsewhere. So that is one idea. The other idea is similar to sort of a Google, when you sort of look for content. Let's say you're looking for, let's say, guitar lessons or so, and in order to sort of have preferred search results similar to a Google search, that would be another way that we could potentially monetize the platform. I think this is, once you get a certain traction, there's always various ways to monetize it. So we have it in the back of our head. We're constantly sort of brainstorming and discussing it also with VCs. But I think once you get traction, once you get this content that is interesting and the people using the platform, there's always going to be various ways to monetize it. And for us, it's important that we don't sabotage this then by choosing the wrong monetization method, which potentially is harming then the quality of the platform.
So tell me about the BitPatron team. So you're based where? And you said you have 6 people on the team. Tell me a little bit about the folks who make up the team.
Yeah, sure. So we're based in Belo Horizonte in Brazil. We're 6 people. The majority of this team has been working for a company called DGI Digital, which is an IT development and consultancy firm in Brazil, nationwide, with around 450 employees. Some of them have been in the early sort of in the early team when the team was only 10 to 15 people, and the team has initially worked with other people on a project called Octus, which is financial analytics tool, and this project was an ERC, or still is an ERC 20 project, and this project is being run by friends of ours, and we have the 6 people that are working on BitPatron. We have previously worked all on Octus, but left the company after the ICO when it was downsized, and have then been doing several roadshows and several sort of attendance of various sort of blockchain meetings, and have been talking to all sorts of peers. And then at some point we sort of realized what our next project will be, and it was clear that it must be in the free speech movement, which we care greatly about. And so yeah, we're 6 people. Out of those 6, 4 are developers, very experienced guys, with all of them have 10 years plus experience. And then there's me in business development. I have a financial background. Also done real estate investing, and have had a great interest for various technologies throughout my career. And then there's one more guy on the team, Vinicius. He has also a business development background. He's a very strategic guy, and is sort of immensely important for the strategy behind BitPatron. So that's the team at the moment.
Great. So 2 more quick questions, and then we'll finish up, because we're running low on time, and
Sure.
you've covered a lot so far. So over the next 12 months, what would be a metric that you think would be a good metric to measure your success?
I think there's several metrics. the short-term metric is to get influencers or content creators with a wide reach, or not the absolute top tier, but the mid tier, which are creating exclusive content on BitPatron, meaning there would be content that is desirable and interesting, which would be exclusive on our platform. In terms of a milestone, let's say in a year from now, we haven't defined a clear number, but let me make one up for the team. If we would have, let's say, maybe 10,000 of really high quality content creators, that would be huge for us. And then obviously anything above that, even better. But I think things like this, if you want to do it in a high quality way, they're not that fast initially, and then once it works, it can go very fast. So I think it will require at least half a year just to get the fully fledged platform ready. And of course, during those 6 months, we're already, even now we're already onboarding people. But during those 6 months, it will be immensely important to get the right people, right content creators on board, or at least supporting us. And then the second half year is really the time where we can hopefully drive up those numbers, subscription numbers. And if there's interesting content, I think we don't have to worry about the audience.
If you had to choose like the top 3 most important features that you need to introduce into the platform in order to start really picking up traction and making the product more appealing to onboard new content creators, what do you think those three most important new features would be?
I mean, at this stage, the alpha is as I mentioned before, you can embed YouTube videos, and I think one other format. I can't even remember what we have. I think, yeah. So it's basically you need to be able to embed a broad range of formats. That is important. Then right now we focus more on the technology rather than on the user experience. So I think the user experience needs to greatly improve, and we know exactly how we want to do it, but it needs to be done. And then third, and it's probably the most important, is to have various payment gateways to be not just appealing to the cryptocurrency space, but also to other content creators.
Great. And so last question, what are some upcoming dates that you have that you'd like to share with us, if any?
Yeah, so we have, there, as I said before, 22nd of February, there will be sort of the first content creator completely leaving Patreon and moving everything to BitPatron, and we will make an announcement. He will make an announcement. So I think this will be great to watch, and also great to follow to see if everything is going to work from a technology standpoint, and whether this business case works, and whether it makes sense to move over. And we haven't defined a date yet for the fully fledged release, but I'd say you can expect it, I'd say, around May. And of course, everything that we're very active on Twitter, BitPatron Co. You can always follow us there and get the latest news. We're really active, and we also get a lot of interesting characters sometimes asking us questions. So it's kind of interesting to follow the whole movement. We get people from all sorts of political views. We get people from the crypto space, from sports, former politicians. We have people that were running for the US presidency that even posted about us. So it's kind of interesting, the people it attracts, and we want to be there for everybody. So it's interesting to follow, and we will put, whenever there's an important date, we'll put it there as well.
Great. It's been a pleasure having you on our podcast to talk about the platform that you guys are developing, and we wish you all the best of luck. And we'd love to have you on our podcast again after you release the updated platform, or whenever you have any new updates or news to share. You have an open invitation to come back on and share it with us. And we'll include a link in our show notes to where our listeners can learn more about BitPatron on your Twitter channel, on your website, and various social media links. So it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks again for joining us. My guest on the show has been Raphael Van Troost, Business Development at BitPatron. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Angelo, for this opportunity. It was my pleasure, and I hope to be back.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bounty Zero X podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast below. Check out bountyzerox.io, the #1 bounty hunting platform where you can complete work and earn cryptocurrency. Please consult your professional financial investment and tax advisors before making any investment in initial coin offerings. Bounty Zero X does not provide investment or financial advice and does not endorse or recommend investment in any ICOs advertised on the Bounty Zero X podcast or website.